Hi. So many levels to this week's sharing, almost like a culmination of all the ones that have been shared so far, coming further and further into fruition and showing the growth that we have the potential to enjoy. So I'll be referring to my notes a bit because there are quite a few layers and different aspects that showed up, but they underline in many ways the same aspect. And that aspect is going back to a past sharing where the two circles of being, who are two individuals, that we all desire this unity of a match. And we want to believe that potential and possibility, it lives within ourselves. And in the desire to have that matched and reflected by other, one tends to go outside rather than further inside and communicating clearly that aspect of self and staying on course with that. And that itself is extraordinarily complex. And the complexity of that is generational trauma, layered also, which is also, it's a large world story that is outside as well. But inside there is this journey of our soul that has, and our spirit that has gone through epic stories. Nobody puts on Netflix to watch somebody sitting there knitting. We are drawn to the epic. But it can also be an addiction to drama and to our stories. And I'm going to call this sharing Stop the Story and create anew, because that is the potentiality at the moment. The new energy that is around is an unknown lightness that's unfamiliar and not natural to us, but it's that we can bring through and relax our nervous system into, and in the process of that, more comes in that you can possibly make up with your mind. So communication is another aspect of this that shone through very clearly. There are those who've had lifetimes of being the middleman, the being the diplomat that in times gone by would have saved and put healing lotion over a potential outbreak of horror. And these beings, having had lifetimes in that position, are still now behaving in ways of being the pleaser, making things okay, instead of really being oneself direct and say, if you're going to have that black cloud in this house that I can feel tangibly in half a days, it's time for you to go for a walk. It's time for you to move out of here, sort it out. I do not want it here. That means you're not enabling anymore. There is so much enabling from good people who feel they've got the epicness of beingness in spirit that can hold the space of the black cloud, and this sense of we win trophies for that effort, we win medals in our spirit for that capacity. It's an old story. And what showed up was this layering in ourselves of our epic stories. And all stories are epic because we come with so much love into this world. Those who've gone through near-death experiences say there are no words that explains that unconditionality of beingness that is freedom to create into. And we enter into this dimension with that, assuming others have it too, and also assuming that that which we carry will heal all others. The sadness comes, and the wearing away of being able to hold on to that space brings about distortions. And usually the distortions are we blame others. It's them. I'm the one that's holding the space together. I'm the one that's making it okay. I'm the one that's bearing the brunt of all of this. And we blame the other. Which then means we hold back the love that is authentically in there. And to be very direct at times, and when it's appropriate, is extraordinarily unconditional love shared with those around us when we speak it very clearly and without anger, but with absolute, this is how I'm seeing it. I cannot do that. I do not want to do it. I do not want to live this way. This is not what I see for myself going forward. And that clarity changes so much. Not only do you love yourself more for what showed up as accountability to self, which is the marriage within, the marriage to self needs accountability. It means needing to speak when things aren't sitting right. Because it's not their fault if you keep enabling. It's also not their fault if you haven't said anything. I think the worst thing that can happen, and it has happened to me, where someone's come to me and said, 20 years ago, this annoyed me. And it's like, great, had you told me 20 years ago, that would have been easy for me to not do. But I didn't know that that was so annoying to you. So now, I've been annoying to you for 20 years because you didn't say it, and I've had to carry the brunt of you not liking it and feeling that energy. So there's a lot of love in saying what it is and coming to terms with what that is for the other person. I can remember asking a question of someone saying, why do you really love X, Y, and Z? Because I wanted to understand it. The answer wasn't what I was expecting. The answer was basically, well, I like it because I'm addicted. And then understanding that, I could see that was previously said that I'll give it up at XYZ time, you know. For those who know Don, it was Don smoking a pipe. And it was just interesting that the reply was, I smoke it so that I don't feel I want to smoke it, which ultimately was an addiction. And I could let it go because it wasn't my business. It wasn't my business, but I had the understanding, and I realised the process. So a discussion doesn't mean it's going to end up the way you want it, but you'll be able to see inside what that is between you, and in the seeing of it, you can let it go. It's not my story anymore. It's not my question anymore. So speaking directly is very important. Clearing the table is the accountability to the marriage within yourself. It's really loving self. And the more one loves self, the more it's not taken away from the presence of yourself in the now. in the wondering, in the questions, in the what's going to happen in the future, or when is it going to happen, which has a huge, huge cost to it. Because another thing that showed up, which was so delightful, and I'll draw some of it, if that may help. I'm not sure. So here we are, our energy in the midline, the connection to the core of Earth and to the whole energetics of Source through all. And in this line, if we take ourselves outside of that line, and we do, we go into this, what I call epic. Another word for epic is desiring to leave a legacy. It can take us outside of our present sense of being. And these, as I said earlier on, these are truly, truly epic lives lived. You know, some of the beings literally have been diplomats for lifetimes. And how do you move out of diplomacy into directness in relationship to another and in honor of yourself, rather than this diplomatic? Because if it's diplomatic, the story really isn't clear, and we both can get away with all sorts of things because we're being diplomatic, we're not being direct. So in dealing with this energy via the work we do as kinesiologists, what showed up was that the spirit line was very willing to say, I can do that. I can do that. I can simply be in the now, have that accountability to myself, really learn to be accountable to the marriage within, and be clear with others on the outside. I am so ready to do that. And then the mind piped up, and the mind said, but what about all the medals on the shelf and all the winning cups I have for the enduring and what I have stood in, and I'm not prepared to let that part of me go. And the reply was, but I can really do this from the spiritual soul aspect. And the mind, seeing that, actually said, actually, so can I. This carrying the epic, the responsibility of a whole school, a whole staff, even though I'm only just a teacher, one teacher inside of it, is a massive carrying that was carried over from past lives, having to be benevolent for large people that were relying on you to take care of them. That's not necessarily the case now, but we carry that. And wow, they were, and they're epic lives. They're extraordinary. But we need to drop the story. So in the freshness of now, we can create anew. And part of what showed up was that there are those who have stayed on course with aspects of their life to such an extent that it is so present. And as we've mentioned in other shares, there is this sense of expansion, where a sense of that bringing more of self into becoming and feeling more the capacity of what we can create in the now, moving forward into a field unknown but beckoning. which is living in the present. It's not living anymore in the story of the victim or the hero or whatever. It's very, very refreshing. And one being that I saw over the weekend was kind of living in this middle line. Wasn't in the epic, wasn't in the center, but was resistant to any sense of change, because if I change and I relax over here, I won't be focused on all the terrible things that can happen. And if I don't focus on all the terrible things that will happen, I will feel awful when a terrible thing will happen because I wasn't focused on the terrible thing. And the terrible thing doesn't happen. And the thing is that even when so-called terrible things happen, when we go to the fullness of ourselves, when we bring it through, it is extraordinary how we can meet those circumstances. And in fact, there were experiences where that actually has happened and has been done several times. So there was this aspect of this expansion from which we can draw that which exists within us and bring further and further into being that we can create with. But this aspect here was delightful in the fact that just by relaxing, all of that will naturally come through anyway. So there's a natural process that's taking place, whether it is through an expansion and bringing it through, or in relaxing, it reveals itself continuously anyway. So I want to share one other aspect that delighted me over the weekend. And that was, we have lived life to a certain point, and in having lived life to a certain point, we can see, with luck, I've got 20 years, 30 years, for some 10, and there is that sense that what lives inside of us takes more of life than what we have left. So there's a sense of, I could have done things here, I didn't do it here, I didn't do it here, I didn't do it here, and now I've only got that much left, and I feel that I could have fitted so much into my life and I haven't got enough of life left. But I can feel the presence of all of that could have been brought into this life. And that's really not enabling a presence in which magic can happen. And as it showed itself that this stops one from actually going into action. And it really said, if you just do whatever it is that speaks in you, you do that here, and then you do it again, and then you do it again, and then you do it again, and then all of a sudden this incredible inspiration comes along that you did not even see in going past this lifetime, because the mind thinks it's a linear process and that we are in a linear time, that we haven't got time left in to actually bring to fruition what we really feel is there. And the deliciousness of this was, in the process of taking the daily action or the the process of doing what it is you want to do, just in the simplicity of doing it, the inspiration comes that opens up a whole new creation and a world you never thought would even appear. So the sharing of what came up for us to share was Mountain Devil. And Mountain Devil has the negative emotions of hatred, anger, holding grudges, suspiciousness, finding fault and blame, and immense sadness. And that is the immense sadness of all the love that we came with. We are sad that we cannot find that match outside of ourselves and therefore blaming others. But the positive of it is unconditional love, happiness, forgiveness, usually ourselves. So this remedy clears away hatred, anger, and major blocks to the expression of love. It is also for deep sadness, which is the other side of anger. It's for people who tend to be fault-finding and suspicious of others. It is for those who are wary or mistrusting. The remedy develops unconditional love, acceptance, and it assists in forgiveness. It brings one back to oneself so that that love which you have is extended regardless of how others are capable of being vulnerable in showing that love or desiring to do so. The little card that came up was communication. What are you saying or not saying? Are your communications clear? Not all communications are verbal. Now is the time to communicate your thoughts and feelings. Speak your mind clearly so as not to be misunderstood. Be inspired as you communicate on all levels with yourself and other energy beings. So I hope some of that is freeing for you and that you're able to stop the story. There are so many layers to that story, generational, many lifetimes lived. Dropping that story, the presence of ourselves and all that is there, and to bring that out, go for it. Bye.